All right. Welcome to the Soul Tapes podcast. My name is Adam Cruz,
My name is Antonio Reyes.
and we are back with another episode. We today want to talk about the band Maverick City, which actually I just bought some tickets to go to their concert because they're going to be in Irvine, which is cool. So,
Oh, interesting.
yeah.
Okay.
So everyone was all like bummed when they first put out their tour because they were like, "Oh, there's no like LA, there's no West Coast," and I was just like, "Calm down, everybody. This is what they do. They're gonna post a West Coast, tour dates." So I already knew that it was gonna eventually come. It was just a matter of them, getting it all set up. So Vanessa and I for sure will be seeing them in September. So that'll be dope.
Cool.
Which, by the way,
dope.
I will
That's
say,
dope.
since we're kind of on that topic, we've, for me personally, like definitely like hip hop is my favorite genre. Worship music, like bands like Hillsong and like Jesus Culture. I've had kind of like ins and outs with like, the music that I've listened to, and even bands like Elevation have been good. But Maverick City is probably like, to me, I don't know. I enjoy their music. I don't listen to like every album or song. I haven't like dove into. I know you said there's a new album, but I still haven't like had a chance to listen to that. But from what I've heard, I really enjoy like the style that they bring to genre like worship music, which is to me a challenging genre to make interesting for me personally.
Yeah.
So I have a love-hate relationship with it for that reason, but.
No, I agree with you. I don't like to follow the cloud. And when they came out and everybody was just posting about them and like their music, and I was like, yeah, I'm not about that. But then there was a song that caught my attention, and I started listening to them a little bit more and more and more, and I really enjoy their type of music. Very organic in a sense, not so flashy in a sense when it comes down to like how do I say there's nothing wrong with production, but I mean it's a little bit more it's like simple per se, but anyways, I think, and also bringing this mix of a gospelish, because I don't think their voices are so like the traditional gospel either, so it's a good mix. I really like it, and I point this out. There's this guy, his name is Dante, was one of the main vocalists. He is, to me, a great storytelling and song and singing.
Yeah.
I was listening to him. I'm actually been listening to his music, specifically his songs. And if you listen to his song, he's a great storyteller. And singing, like, I'm amazed the way he does it, and he makes it sound so like organic. So anyways, I haven't bought tickets. I don't know if they're gonna be over here. I think they're gonna be here for sure in Northern California, but
yeah, they are.
I'm
gonna
with
be in
you
Fresno
in a sense,
for sure.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's a little far for me, but
yeah, I think they might have one closer.
I'm not as well. I'm not as well as like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go to worship nights and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, I love the worship, but anyways, I don't want to be the one hating on it because they're amazing.
Well, I bought them for Vanessa, so she's been wanting to go. So
Oh yeah.
it was a gift to her.
Yeah. No, that's cool. But this is where we're gonna jump in, right? We wanted to talk about something interesting that happened with one of their vocalists, right? What is his name? Chandler Moore?
Yeah, Chandler Moore. Yeah.
That he has sing in with Justin Bieber. He has come out and like obviously with that album and with different albums now. He's collaborating with a lot of people. He's kind of like the hot person right now that everybody wants to feature. I feel in the Christian world.
Yeah.
And he just got married, and he posted on social media, and in one of the posts, in one of the pictures, it might seem that he's kind of like his wife is kind of twerking on him, type of thing.
Yeah.
Or can do you have a better way to describe it?
Yeah, like it. Well, from my perspective, and I think that was clear, but it was more of like the perception of it, because it was clear that they were dancing.
Yeah.
you know. But
Of course.
it was like a still kind of almost like a boomerang type picture.
Yeah.
So she was bent over, and that's kind of where people
Yeah.
were looking at it as like sexually explicit kind of, idea.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
I like that. And so happens that, as always, unfortunately, the Christian world exploded in social media, and they kind of like criticize him. A good amount of people came to defend him. A good amount of people, even in the influential side, came to defend him. But a lot of people were kind of upset. They were a little thrown off by it. Even probably offended by it because it triggers this kind of like sexual type of thing,
Yeah, yeah.
sensual type of like picture. And I do have an issue with this specific um, not a picture, but with the way we engage with that, because I think it leads us to a deeper conversation
Yeah.
about sex and sexuality. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. It's funny because like when I see these things, uh, I typically someone told me like, oh, that they were kind of going off on him or whatever, and for me, I'm like, I see it, and I'm like, okay, like I understand like where the perception comes from, but I think this is why context is so important because
Yeah.
the biggest thing is that this is from their wedding. Like I do agree with it
Yep.
with the pushback of people saying if this was like a random Thursday and they just post
Yeah.
some random picture and there's no context, you don't know if they're married or not. Like, for those that obviously do follow him, probably knew that he's, at this moment, if this was,
Yeah.
a month ago or a year ago, wasn't married, then I could see more of a critique and saying, hey, like, maybe not the best picture to post of you and your girlfriend,
Yeah.
I could
Yeah. Yeah.
see,
Yeah.
like as myself, who's been like a youth leader for, who was a youth leader for like 10 years and even like working with
Yeah.
young adults, like, I would probably be that person to say like, hey man, like, you know, it's your choice, but at the same time, I just want to let you know, like the way this comes off is maybe not the best idea of what you want to like be posting. But in his
Yeah.
situation, clearly being married, I feel like that's a completely different like conversation because of the context of when this picture is taken and what this represents.
So you think? Let me ask you this, because you mentioned this, right? The context is very important. I agree with it. But do you think by the picture and the way they dress, that they need a lot of context to understand that it was a wedding?
No, see, and that's why to me this situation it doesn't fit in that where it's like clearly they were even with all the other pictures like in a wedding dress like I feel
Yeah.
I don't remember but like I think maybe the caption might have mentioned something like so it's like
Yeah.
based on the context of saying that this is clearly two people who are now married now they're one
Yeah.
like nah like that's at this point like first off they're clearly dancing so that's the thing that to me is
Yeah.
like it's there's not even
Yep.
room to say that there's like anything else going on and so to me like if I was dancing with my wife like and wanted to post a picture or whatever it's like okay like at the end of the day you know that like there's only so much you can say in with that context of being like seeing a married couple together like clearly happy together. That to me, that's the kind of
Yeah.
stuff that I feel like gets lost with these conversations. Is like, man, you should be
Yeah.
celebrating two young people
Of
like
course.
joining together under God to be, celebrating
Yeah.
marriage, and like that to me is like the most important thing.
Yeah. And we actually, just to take it back to like dancing with our wives, we actually have been in places where we have danced,
Yeah,
together and stuff,
yeah,
like, so it's fun, it's amazing, but I agree, I think that when I think about the picture, perhaps it was not the wisest picture, perhaps, but also my pushback, because this bothers me, and this is where I get rid of my peacemaking part, because I think they have an issue with like the Christian circle when it comes down to sexuality, you
yeah,
know
yeah,
I think we're so this purity movement that comes from the 70s, 80s, 90s, they have embedded in us, that obviously sex is beautiful, is holy, is sacred.
Yeah.
But it also doesn't educate us. It doesn't like help us with it. It makes us feel guilty about these situations.
Yeah.
It bothers me because then you have a group of people and I mean, I didn't get married being a virgin, you know,
Yeah.
but there's many that have, you know, that sometimes they have no knowledge about what they're getting themselves into. They just heard stories, you know, and then that becomes an issue, you know, because you don't know the boundaries, you don't know what is, you know, like what is right or wrong, you know, because
Yeah.
we also have a generation that is being educated inside the church by pornography
Yeah.
of how we should have sex
Yeah.
and what sex is, right? So when we see this type of stuff, you know, we right away censor it because it's too sexual. To me, it's not. And yes, once again, it's not a wise picture, but at the same time, we need to stop being so judgmental in a sense. And I think we should apply to certain, like their marriage. Like we say, you know, we got lost in just this picture instead of celebrating what was happening between both of them, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
And I know I throw out a whole thing, but
no, it's okay. I
that's
think
just my thoughts.
You know,
to begin with.
the only thing I would push back on a little bit is I don't even think it was
Yeah.
I don't think it was an unwise picture. I think that
Okay.
the question would be like when you post something, because that's what we all have to ask ourselves when we go to post something. We have
Yep.
to ask, especially if we kind of have an idea. Okay, this could get pushed back, especially if you have thousands of followers and whatever. You're gonna ask yourself, is the pushback worth me posting this picture? So sometimes we might say, you know what, this is a funny joke or a funny meme, but maybe it's not worth
Yeah.
me posting on my Instagram. I don't want to hear like, you know, someone say, hey, like, you know, I look up to you. I don't think that's that's inappropriate or whatever.
Yeah.
But to me, like, if I was in his shoes, I would say this picture to me, this is me and my wife. I think it's a dope picture. Because to me, like, this is what we have to understand. Like, moments like that, I guarantee for him and for his wife, it was about the moment. It was about the fact
Yep.
that it wasn't that. It was like, and even if it was a sexually explicit picture, if you want to call it that, it's like, hey, guess what they were
Yeah.
probably going to be doing that night? Probably, you know,
Yeah.
celebrating their marriage.
Exactly.
So to me, it's
Right.
like the fact that this topic is still so taboo within like the church is crazy because it's. I understand it, but I think it speaks to the fact that we need to do so much more work in this area to kind of
Yep.
to educate and to be able to celebrate like the way that God views love and marriage and sex, because the fact is that I know that for a fact I've read articles, I've you know had conversations with people where you know you get like testimonies of experiences where man like the fact that you're taught in church or like this taboo of man like you don't even want to talk about it, we don't want you don't get educated on it, and when you do hear about it it's all negative. Guess what? It's the same thing. It's the same conversation when people talk about, oh, like as a man, if you struggle with like porn or these addictions, that if you don't deal with that before you get married, like marriage isn't gonna fix it. Well, it's the same conversation when you are taught unhealthy perspectives of sex. That just because you get married and now you're, you know, in a marriage relationship, that doesn't mean being married is now gonna fix your perspective on how you view sex. You're still gonna have this negative connotation around it because that's all you were taught.
Yeah. No, I agree, you know, and I think that just going back real quick, let me clarify something about like not being virgin when I got married, you know.
Yeah.
It's unfortunately because I wish I would have honored my wife and honor God with that.
Yeah.
You know, unfortunately I came from a very broken background that I just didn't know how to heal from my sexuality. So I think that was an issue, you know, but my wife was kind enough and gracious enough to walk with me through that process. But anyways, going back to what we're talking about right now, you know, I think that's such an important conversation. And I do believe this, you know, and I think church should be the first one on speaking on and having a healthy perspective about sexuality, you know, not just in marriage conferences, or that kind of stuff, like think for youth and in Bible colleges and
Yeah.
colleges that are Christian.
Totally.
I think we should be talking about this, because you have, once again, a whole generation that they see that as a taboo. Perhaps we don't have insight, we don't have revelation, we don't have wisdom on how to actually, what is healthy and what is not.
Yeah.
And then when we come into marriage, right, this is why we have a whole, also outside the church, in our society, like they want to try the car before they buy it, like
Yeah.
because they want to know if it's gonna be good,
Yeah,
like.
yeah.
And I mean, to me, it's like, dude, you're not buying a car. It's a human being, just to begin with. But
First of all,
anyways,
yeah.
I think that you know what I mean. Like, first of all, let's stop with that. But
Yeah.
anyways, I think that sex. I think, and I admire people. There's mentors of mine. They have not just they don't have just counselors, but they also have how do you call it, sexologists, or
sex therapists.
people that. Sex therapist, there you go, sex therapist. And to me, it's like, man, that's great, because that's such an important factor that we have to take into our marriage. To have a great sex life is an important, but we keep having these taboos, where you can't enjoy with your wife, doing these things. It's just, and I'm taking it too far. I know I'm taking it to another extreme where I get it, but I think that, to me, what triggered me about this picture, beyond just the issue, quote unquote, is, to me, it led me to this conversation more than anything.
Yeah, and I think when I think about, like, the part of the issues is that, when we see images like this online and on our phone or even on social media, we're so used to seeing negative versions of sexuality. So everything becomes perverted. So that's the thing, is that we live in a sexualized culture in our world. We can't get away from that. We understand that. But that's where we have to check ourselves first. And when we think about things like this and say, hey, what is the context of this picture? Is it, what is really going on here? Was the intent of this meant to be negative? Was the intent of this meant to be malicious? Was the intent of this meant to cause people to stumble? And when you start to ask yourself these questions, you might look at a post like this and say, hey, because there's different perspectives of even Christians saying, like, hey, maybe I wouldn't post that. But at the same time, I'm not going to condemn him, because I understand that I understand the context. I understand that this is actually a beautiful thing to say, hey, man, two young people coming together, getting married, honoring God with their relationship. Like, that's beautiful. And that's what we have to, I think, needs to be the narrative of when we see things like this. Is like saying, hey, man, this is a generation of people that grew up, like, online, that grew up using social media, that grew up, posting things. So there's an older generation that sees stuff like this and says, man, like, it's so unnecessary. It's so, like, why even post it? Why can't you just post a traditional picture? The reality is, like, our generation is not traditional. Our generation is breaking traditions. Our generation is growing up with new technologies and new ways to communicate. So for them, like, I guarantee the only people that are really outraged or, like, or even, like, stressing about this are like older millennials and older, because I guarantee Gen Z and all the younger kids see a picture like this and don't even think twice.
Oh yeah, bro, for sure. That's a fact. That's a fact. So I think that just when it comes down to like you say, we have to see like the perspective of it, like there's some people who say I wouldn't post this, but man, I applaud them. This is I don't condemn it, and I think that's a wise thing. I think, to me, it just takes me to this place of I think we need to do a better job, at talking about these things. We need more wisdom in the way we communicate, what we want to comment, or when we want to comment on a picture or something that we disagree on. We just have to be wiser with that, because dude, like, and then also, like, it's just doing it online, like, I mean, you don't even know him, to begin with. You don't know who he is. Like, there's some people that are in proximity with him, and I think the people that are in proximity with him understand it. But the people that are far away that don't know who he is, it's like, come on, man. Like, but anyways, I think that's kind of like my 2 cents. That was my issue, Like, I think it takes me to this place of we need to do a better job. We need to talk about more about sex. We need to stop being so have this like mentality, and be more open when it comes down to our sex life, and the way what we categorize as, is that sensual, is that triggering me? If it's triggering you, in a sense, I'm not. How can I say this? I don't want to be mean to it. But I think it talks more about you than them. There's something that you need to deal with. You need to figure it out. You need to, and I speak for myself. I speak to my own life. Like, if there's things that trigger me on social media, it should be also my job to take care of my heart and my mind. Yeah. So
that's good.
Anyways,
no, I think that's really good, man. Especially when we're talking about online. Responding to things that trigger us, responding to things that we disagree with. I mean, that's why, to me, like, whenever people ask me, like, oh, should I say something? Should I comment back? Should I respond? Like, half the time, 90% of the time, my answer is, like, why? Like, what is the benefit? Yeah, what is the benefit? What do you really think is going to happen? Do you really think this person's going to take your nasty comment and be like, man, you know what? This random person that I don't even really know in real life really had a good point. Half the time, probably not. And so it's a challenging place to be. But I think this is where it speaks to social media culture, is that just because you're following someone doesn't mean that you have a voice in their life. Just because you're following someone doesn't mean that you have authority or that you have influence over their life. I think that the best response to something like this, or something you disagree with, is by modeling your own perspective on your own platforms. Like saying, hey, like for me, like when I post something and I say things because that's what I believe. It's because I really, see life in this perspective or a certain way. So even when we have conversations on here, it's like, this is our chance to share our opinion. We don't have to go and share this with people that we know will disagree. If people choose to follow and hear it, then they can choose to do with that what they want. But we don't. It's not our job to have these debates. But I think it's really. I love what you said about just kind of paying attention to our triggers and asking ourselves that question: why is this triggering us? What are things that we thought or believed? How can what is God maybe even trying to teach us with this? Maybe revealing something within us that maybe we actually have had wrong. So that's really good, man.
Yeah, no, I agree, and taking another route when it comes down to this whole social media culture, commenting on stuff, that trigger you. I think I'm the same, I think I have learned from leaders and people that I look up to, to not engage. And they're, like, it's just not worth it. Because you're never going to arrive to a place, it's just like back and forth. But anyways, I just got one of my friends send me a video, about this guy on TikTok. Kind of like bashing on preachers, and communicators on the way they communicate. That some of them they use their voice, they go high, they talk passionate, and then towards the end they lower their voice, and he explains it to you very accurate, because I'm not gonna lie, it's very accurate. And he's like, it's just like, it sounds like you're manipulating us. It sounds like this is not real. We just want real conversations, honest conversations. And they send it to me, say, hey, what is your thoughts? They were asking me. I never thought about this, but it's true, And she was telling me that she was going through all the comments, and then everybody was saying, oh yes, that's why I left the church. That's why I don't go to church. That's what, He's like, nobody actually came to say something different, And I told her, I was like, I give her my opinion, and I was like, I'm not gonna jump into that social media debate, because we're never gonna arrive to a place. And at the end of the day, they can have their opinion, they can say all they want, but they have never sit down with someone to actually have the conversation to really, you know, tackle this issue, you know, because to me, it was like, I have my perspective and I can give you my observation, you know, but I'm not going to go jump in and fight people. There's moments that I want to, heck yeah. There's moments that I want to tell someone because how ignorant they are, of course. But I mean, it's just not worth it to me. It's just not at the place that I want to be. And then I just save my opinion when I can actually have the conversation with someone.
Yeah.
And we can arrive to a place, you know?
Yeah. And just because someone posts a comment on social media saying this is why I did something, half the time that's not the full context of the story anyways.
Yep.
And if you left like a place like church because of the way someone communicated, like that's not that's such a superficial like answer, you know?
Heck yeah.
So
yes, bro.
Yeah.
And then they swear that they never been moved by great communicators, right?
Yeah.
They usually try to hold preachers and pastors to a different standard that is not fair, you know? Like that's the reality. And then the reality is also like you're telling me that I don't have the right to educate myself in communication to become a better communicator.
Yeah.
Because if I do, then I sound hollow, like I'm superficial, I'm not being honest. That's not true. You know, that's dishonest about that comment. So, but I agree that that's a thin line with your walk. That's a thin line between like, you know, like between maybe manipulating people and learning how to talk and how to engage people. I get it. It's a thin line, but you cannot generalize that comment to everyone.
Yeah, and I think, you know, people always will attack greatness. To me, it's like it's also kind of telling that, you know, they're gonna call out certain communicators because they're good at what they do. And when you're good at what you do, you're gonna always get criticism and pushback from people. Because I guarantee the ones that they're not criticizing are the monotone, boring communicators. Because guess what? Their critique is going to be, man, I fell asleep when this dude was talking. I fell asleep when this person was talking. This was boring. This is whatever. And they don't realize that if it's not one thing, it's another. So that's a whole another conversation that we could totally dive into if we want to, but if not, we can
completely, bro. But I'm good.
Oh man, yeah. Well, I think it's, personally, I think it's good for us to give our perspective on things like this. I think it's, I hope it's helpful for people listening and that they,
hopefully,
if nothing else, because my thing is not everyone has to agree with our opinions. But that you would at least open yourself up to a new perspective. I think that to me is most important, is that we don't live and die by our opinions. Because I know if you're anything like me, like my opinion today could change tomorrow. My perspective could change tomorrow. So, there's certain core values that I have. But at the end of the day, I think it's important for us to be open to having conversations and hearing people out, whether we agree or not.
Yeah. I agree with you. Well, it was a great conversation. I think that, like you said, I'm sorry. This is our opinion, and we want to give our observation. Everybody doesn't have to agree with us, but I think that we just want to make sure we give our perspective on the subjects. But great talking to you, man.
Yep. So, if you enjoy this episode or the Soul Tapes podcast, make sure to follow us on Instagram, social media, YouTube channel. We want to continue to put out more content. So we love you guys. Appreciate you. This is the Soul Tapes podcast. We'll see you guys next time. For the ones who always had my back in. Never let the people's doubt become your main attraction. So many dreams up in my head, I start to feel amazing. I know that I'm the only one that's qualified to chase them.